I remember reading stuff that therapists would say of like the children of alcoholics, they have no guilt over cutting out a parent. Whereas the child of a narcissist, they've had to deal with so much propaganda and they've had to deal with so much like what was good, what was bad, and they've been told this story over and over and over again.
One of the dynamics that doesn't get enough attention is the toxic mother-daughter relationship. Well, today, Alex Anderson, independent filmmaker, joins me to talk about why he featured this particularly complicated relationship in his movie Fog. I'm so thrilled to be joined by Alex Anderson today, the independent film director out of New York, who created a fascinating film about a relationship, a mother-daughter relationship that's very difficult, very toxic. So thank you so much for being here with me, Alex. I deeply appreciate it. Why don't you tell people a little bit about the film so that they know what context we're talking about, and then we can get into why you made this film the way that you did, why you were so attracted to this topic.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you so much for having me. The brief synopsis, I would say, is the film opens with a television writer who is in therapy, and they recently started going to therapy because of the death of their father. And while they're in the early stages of uncovering that they have a toxic relationship with their mother. And it's a mother-daughter, and she has come to the conclusion in therapy that the relationship is probably unsalvageable and that the only course of action is to go no contact. And so that is where we start. Is she has written a no contact letter to her mother. She does feel the need to go home to spread her father's ashes and have closure there. And so she goes home to spread her father's ashes. And while she's home, she kind of becomes unclear whether she wants to continue to go no contact with her mother. And that's kind of the crux of what the movie is about, is her trying to make the difficult choice, the horrendous choice of what type of relationship she wants to have with her mother moving forward.
The trailer alone just tore me to pieces. I mean, it's the way that you did that was so powerful with, I think it's a voice overlay of her reading her no contact letter as she's going through life. And I mean, I feel emotional just even thinking about it. It was just gripping. And the movie I found so compelling. So I have a lot of questions about it. What got you interested in this particular dynamic?
Yeah, no, great question. And as a writer, it's funny how the kernel of an idea can evolve over time, because the original intention wasn't to write a no contact movie. The original intention wasn't a narcissistic mother-daughter per se. The original kernel of the idea was, I started as a stand-up comedian. I moved to New York City to do comedy, and then it kind of evolved into writing jobs, etc., and then transitioning to indie filmmaking. And the original kernel of the idea was kind of, where does comedy come from? And I was home and I was like, man, I do my best. And I have a great family and I'm not no contact. I like to make that clear. But I was like, man, I do my best. Whatever it is, like it stirs up childhood stuff. I do my best writing when I'm home. And that was kind of how it happened. And I've witnessed this relationship with women friends of mine. And as I was kind of working on this idea, I couldn't believe some of the stuff that women, like a few women friends of mine have had these complex relationships with their mothers, and they would share some of these horrific things that had happened to them. And to an outside observer, it's like, why would you continue? Like, this is horrendous, and there was a specific instance where I remember a friend of mine telling me something horrible that her mother had done to her. And she's like, I'm never talking to her again. And then 3 to 4 months later, I'm seeing social media posts of a nice beach day with her and her mom, and so these are kind of the seeds that were planted. And I had the lead, Amanda Van Nostrand, who's an excellent actor based here in New York. I thought she was great and I wanted her to play the comedy writer. And so it kind of evolved. And the exploration of like, where does comedy come from was kind of lost. As I did research on narcissistic relationships, I found out about fog and fear, obligation, guilt. And it's crazy. I remember like reading stuff like that therapists would say of like the children of alcoholics, they have no guilt over cutting out a parent, right? It is so clear and they hate them. And it's like, they're out of my life and that's that and good riddance. Whereas the child of a narcissist, they've had to deal with so much propaganda and they've had to deal with so much like what was good, what was bad, you know, and they've been told this story over and over and over again that they have a very, very hard time letting that go. It doesn't matter how much evidence is stacked. And yeah, and so basically as I was doing the research into this and kind of learning more, because my friends would tell me things and that's kind of what clued me in, but like we didn't go into the depths of this. And that's where I learned about fear, obligation, guilt, and the concept of fog. And there are basically no good solutions here. It's kind of what level of contact you want to have. And none of the options are good. It's not getting fixed. It's a horrific situation and there are no winners. And that's how the story evolved.
Yeah, I forgot how she had the dilemma, the main character, the protagonist had the dilemma that she was trying to write for a series, TV series. And then meanwhile, she's trying to do it at home while she's got this situation that's dealing with her father's ashes. But what I found was so compelling was exactly what you're describing, was the confusion. And it's even, I love the fact that you named it fog. I know that FOG stands for fear, obligation, and guilt, which even that is really powerful. But there is a fogginess that happens in these relationships. I'm a narcissistic abuse survivor myself, came from a toxic family, and my own childhood was very, very difficult. And what I experienced in these relationships, any type of a narcissistic relationship, is this tug pull that you experience with this individual, that there is the obligation part. The fact that you're compassionate, that you understand that they've got difficulties, you see the deficit, you see the potential, what could be. And I thought you portrayed it so powerfully in this movie that she's getting wooed back, seduced back into the relationship. And it's interesting, you also introduced her brother as another character that adds the tension, who's sort of like, well, I don't see what the issue is. I'm not having a problem with this person, which is so typical of these types of relationships.
Absolutely. Yeah. That adds to, the person who has experienced all of this, who, the brother character was very important to this because that happens all the time, right? In doing this is that you're already having a hard enough time realizing it, right? And then you have this person who you love, who didn't, you have a good relationship with you, telling you the exact opposite. And telling you, no, they're great, all the good things. And it's just this other version, because they are firmly in the fog, and there's just this gravitational pull to keep you in the fog and not see things clearly. And I wrote the backstories. I did label these things for the actors. So there was no confusion of just a list of horrific things that they did. So that there's no, hey, you were abused. Okay. All of these things happened and they still don't see things clearly. Because also I wanted to show, because it is gray, because there is also some love there. There is love. Doesn't mean you have to subject yourself to it, but there, I mean, you could really get into it, and I'm not a therapist, but does the mother love the daughter, or does she love what she brings to her? And so she shows her love as a way to get what she needs from her. I mean, it's a whole, it's out of my pay grade, but that's where I spent years studying it as a psychologist. Exactly.
Yeah, it is a complex situation. And that's a really good point. I think the answer is both. I mean, the mother loves to the best degree that she knows how, but it's a very inadequate, it's a deficit kind of love. That here's the thing that I've realized, it forces those in the relationship with a toxic individual. And it doesn't matter whether you're a daughter, you're the brother, or you're the partner of this person. It forces you into this terrible decision between deciding the connectedness with this individual over your own personal safety.
Yes.
You're being constantly put into this bind of having to choose whether it's a form of betrayal. The person who's toxic will feel betrayed if you don't stay connected. And boy, did you powerfully show that at the end of that movie. That scene was horrible. But also you could think about what will it cost Jane, but nearly everything when it comes to her own integrity to stay connected to her mom. And that's such a terrible decision that we have to stand on, is that choice where you're forced to, it's literally like an edge, like a cliff that you're forced. You either choose your own protection or you choose this relationship, but if you do it, you lose yourself in the process.
So the trailer on TikTok got a lot of traction, which was great, which I'm happy about. But it also got a lot of, mainly women who have experienced this, but it also got a lot of parents who have had their children go no contact to them. And so I get a lot of hate from parents reaching out to me and just saying awful things. And I'm not callous. I have some empathy for them. It's a whole complex thing of why they are the way they are. It's, again, you would know better than I, but they've usually experienced trauma. It's not good how this is made. And I've said on some comments and some posts, and I now just try and not comment with them.
I think that's probably the wisest, is not to comment.
No. Yeah. I don't want anything to do with these people. It's not the group of people you want coming after you.
You're not going to win. You're on that edge of you're not going to win,
No, exactly. But I try and tell them, and especially with daughters, they don't want to do this. This is not this is not an easy choice. And I had, the woman who played the mother, who's an excellent, she's Juilliard trained. She's been on Broadway. She's excellent. And, she did grill me about certain things in the script before shooting, because she was like, why would any daughter keep coming around? And it's like, look, every daughter has one mother, right? And there's only one chance at every daughter wants the love of their mother, right? And there's a certain way I think a mother can look at a daughter that, she only looks a certain way in her mother's eye. She doesn't get that from anywhere else. And she only has one shot at that relationship. She'll do anything to make it work. That's all she wants. And so that's why she keeps coming around. Every daughter wants to have a great relationship with their mother. They're rooting for that. If they did this, you did something.
Yeah. I saw that most poignantly back when I was working in a psychiatric facility and I was working with children. And I had one of my clients was about 6 or 7 years old. He had actually attempted suicide because he got so desperate and hopeless with the relationship. And his mom would come and visit him, and you would think it was Christmas Day that he was so hopeful for that connectedness with her again. And this is a woman that just didn't have the resources. I'm not saying she had a cluster B personality disorder, but she just lacked a lot of internal resources to really know how to show up for it. But he never gave up hoping that she could somehow show up differently in the future. And I'll tell you, it just broke my heart because you knew that this wasn't going to work out well for either one of them.
No, it's horrible.
Yeah.
It's horrible. It's like, I said this earlier, there are no good solutions.
No, the no contact parents, the parents were protesting that no contact. To me, the fact that they're protesting shows the lack of empathy. Because as a mom, and I've gone through people who know my story because, they know I was widowed. And after my late husband passed away, one of my kids stopped talking to me for a year. Literally no contact on Mother's Day, no contact on my birthday. Yeah, I saw him at Christmas, but he stood way off in distance. I have sons. I don't have daughters. But I respected that. I knew it wasn't deserved. I knew that we just went through a horrible tragedy as a family and that the rage that we were all feeling was related to grief. But I supported his decision because it was his decision and I cared about him. We did come back together around another huge, awful tragedy that at least worked out positively. My oldest son also got cancer and was very gravely ill. And the son that wasn't speaking to me were roommates. So he was living with them and experienced firsthand what it was like to have somebody close potentially dying. And he pulled me out. We had this private conversation. He goes, Mom, I was really angry at you. And I stopped talking. And now I get it. I get what happened. And I'm really sorry. And I said to him, you know what? Your feelings were justified. What happened to you was wrong. And unfortunately, I didn't have a better way through it, but you lost. You lost me. You lost your dad. And that rage you felt was justified. But what I noticed with parents who are really enraged around that experience is that they're still missing the essential piece, which is the child's experience. Yes, it's an adult child's experience, but they have their version. We should care about their version. It has realistic roots to it, just like my son's rage with me had realistic roots to it that I couldn't change, but still made it painful. I think that's what we often miss. We just want my version and my pain to be the focus here.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. And I'm sorry you went through all that. And I'm glad, he came back.
Yeah. No, he's in complete remission. So thank God for that. But yeah, do you know what cognitive dissonance? Had you come across it when you were reading about as you're prepping for this material?
I believe so. Yes.
Because you did a great job of showing that, which is that ambivalence that you kind of described in the movie where she's written the letter. I mean, that was the part at first was like, well, maybe she hadn't written it. No. You start out, it's chronological. She's written this letter. She's going to terminate contact with her mom. But she goes home for one more time. The therapist even says, this is a smart idea. She thinks it's a smart idea. So she goes home, but this letter exists. This plan exists. And then you see her getting moved back in. And then she, again, kind of reaffirms the plan. But that wooing process, that hot and cold, that is so typical what happens in these relationships. It leaves victims so absolutely confused. I wondered if it was hard for you to sort of, because here's the pushback I get as a creator who talks about my experience and other people's experiences. We like to think making a decision should be simpler, and that we like to pretend that we don't need people and that connectedness isn't important, so that if somebody burns us, we should just be done with them. But it isn't that simple or direct.
No, it's not. Everything we just talked about, the boy who wanted the love, if there's this connection, and you can have other strong connections in your life, but you have one mom.
Yeah.
And that's it. You're not replacing your mom. And the cognitive dissonance, I mean, that was something I very much wanted to show. It's a funny movie in that people who have gone through this, a lot is happening, right? Like they're noticing all these really small, subtle things.
Yes.
People who haven't, like I have guy friends of mine who think I made the most boring movie of all time. And I have guy friends who also loved it, who have no experience, but like I have guy friends who couldn't finish it. And it was really, as a filmmaker, like I still wanted to entertain. And so it was and that's partially, the runtime is short, but I wanted this to work for not just people who have gone through this experience. And so, there is a little bit of a slow burn element for
there is. I'm a writer, if you know that. I wrote a memoir. So I do know what you're struggling with is the issue of pacing. How fast do you pace the story?
Yes.
I thought the pacing was perfect, honestly, because I do analyze, like, how great was that plot? Did it move along, or did it no, I thought the pacing was perfect, but you're right. There was multiple layers going on in those slow sections. It really, actually, if you were aware, it wasn't slow, but it could feel slow to somebody who wasn't getting her conflict with herself around work, her conflict with her relationship with her brother, the fact that she's still grieving her dad, the fact that she can't tell what's real or not real about her mom. I mean, all of that's happening at the same time. Yeah.
Absolutely. And things like a buddy of mine might watch the mom writing and think nothing of it, but it's actually a kind of an aggressive act.
Yeah, it is. It was very passive aggressive. Yeah.
It's like, oh, you're entering her domain and like having this weird, subtle competition thing with your daughter and and then when you bring it up to your brother, he dismisses it and is like, no, like that, what?
Oh, you nailed it. And mothers and daughters do that a lot.
Yeah.
They do that a lot where there's this funny, I'm not saying there's not mirroring in a lot of narcissistic relationships. There is, but mothers and daughters have a particular time trying to separate their identity because of this merging thing that happens where the daughter feels like she can't have her own identity because mom keeps intruding, like becomes friends with her boyfriend, starts dressing like her, takes on, all of this. In fact, one of the horrible cases back in graduate school was another colleague of mine, a student of mine, had a dynamic like that between a mother and daughter, and the daughter suicided successfully. That was the only way she found that she could find separation was by death.
Awful.
Yeah. So that I thought that was perfect. That invasion into the daughter's world by adopting her hobby or her lifestyle was like, that was perfect. Okay. Here's a question though. I didn't know for sure if the mom was narcissistic or a borderline personality disorder. And I wondered how you sort of...
that's a great question. So it's purposely ambiguous.
Okay.
In that, because there are some overlapping traits there. And when I was doing my research on it, there is a borderline that kind of is like the archetype of the queen. That's one of the but that can also be narcissistic.
Yeah.
And I had help from a therapist friend of mine in terms of what a therapist would say, which is like, hey, I can't diagnose your mom, right? She does exhibit these, I tried to let it be both and not label it. I think it might be more narcissistic, but it's tricky.
Well, I was like, no, I think she's a borderline. When I finished it, I think she's a borderline because the explosion, the volatility.
Yes.
That felt to me very more borderline-ish than I felt narcissistic. Narcissists tend to just get into a cold rage. They do more guilting and backstabbing and cold revenge kind of. But that blow up was just awful, powerful.
Yeah, it's atrocious. It
is.
And filming that was insane.
Oh, I bet. I bet. Yeah. So to wrap up today, do you think that the daughter maintained no contact? I mean, if you were to if we could peek into her life a year later, how resolved do you think Jane got at the end of the movie?
It's funny because I don't think I'm going to do this, but never say never. I love the actors. I loved working with them, and I think they're so great. And I love them as a family. They just felt like a family to me. And, I love the scenes with Jane and her brother. Like, I have made jokes about turning this into a trilogy. And maybe, I don't know if you've seen the Before Sunset trilogy, like that Richard Linklater made with Ethan Hawke. And I don't know.
I haven't seen that.
They're very good, but they made 3 movies like 10, 12 years apart. And I was thinking, if you were going to do that, you could do one called like Guilt, like 10 years where she has a daughter and she thinks she should meet her. And then maybe a third one called Obligation where her mom's dying. And that's why I think it's a happy ending. I mean, in a horrible sense of the thing is I think she leaves and maintains no contact. That's what I think. But it's when you make these things, it's up to everyone to kind of make that decision. But
it is.
Yeah. That's kind of where my head was at, that she, just to work on something kind of dark, and have it be, it doesn't feel like a happy ending, but I think she sees things very clearly. In that moment. I mean,
yeah, it felt that way to me too. But I also know it's never that simple. I mean, that's the problem with these relationships. It's never that simple.
No. And that's where the joke of a trilogy would.
Yeah,
and unfortunately, there's more facets to this type of relationship that we could explore.
Right.
It's not, we just kind of got into a couple, there's a lot going on and now we have a grandchild.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Or even just that, as a woman grows or anybody has developmental stages, we have different needs and the different needs then compel desires. It means we want connected with other people in a different way or to rework what wasn't done before. So, yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, first of all, for making the film. It deeply, deeply touched me. I really appreciated having you reach out and offer this opportunity to get to meet you and talk to you about it. I want to jump over to the podcast extra. Let's talk about maybe some of the biggest questions people had or that you struggled with when you were making the film as you were trying to really dive into a narcissistic relationship between a mother and a daughter. Let's do that. But thank you so much for being here on this. So how can people find the movie? And I'm going to make sure I put it in the show notes and learn a little bit more about you and your work.
Appreciate that. Yeah, you can watch it there's a free streaming service called Tubi. I also, which it's available in America and Canada and Australia. I also did put it on my YouTube channel because there's international people, if they want to watch, search Fog Alex Anderson. It should pop up. My website, it's also, everything is on my website, alexanderson.tv.
Okay.
Yeah. If you want. All right. For the love of God, if someone could follow me on social media, that's how they that's how they cast and make movies now. But no pressure.
I
don't post a ton. Yeah.
I know. I don't know what it would be like to be in your position today. That must be really tough.
It's a wild industry.
Yeah, I have a feeling it is. Well, thank you so much, Alex. I really deeply appreciate it. It's been wonderful meeting you. And we're going to jump over to the podcast extra now. Well, that's a wrap for this week's episode. Are you following me on TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube? You can find me at Kerry McAvoy, Ph.D. Or you can learn more about me and my resources such as the Toxic Free Relationship Club at kerrymcavoyphd.com. And I'll see you back here next week.